things like augmented reality will very quickly become what your camera currently is, something you use every day and something that adds to your experience in life, the utility in your life. And when that happens, there's so much opportunity for storytelling for advertisers.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Jim Lesser, the president and CEO of BBDO San Francisco. Jim, it's good to have you.
Hi there. Good to be here.
I wanted to dive right in, and could you tell us a little bit about BBDO and your unique value proposition in the marketplace?
Sure. Well, BBDO is obviously a large global network, and across our hundreds of offices around the world, we're all united by one simple mantra, which is the work, the work, the work. And that's been our mantra for a long time, and it's been the sort of guiding light for a lot of what we've done, over decades. So I think the simple reason for the success of that idea is that it keeps us focused on the one thing that can actually create results for our clients, which is obviously the work. So we always say if the work isn't changing people's behavior, then it's not changing the bottom line for our clients. And so we need to be maniacally focused on what is the actual work. That means the strategic part, the insight, the crafting of the message, all of those things go into that. So in a world where media changes constantly and the landscape's constantly evolving and fracturing and rebuilding itself, the thing that we can stay focused on is the actual output, our product, which is the work.
I love that you came into the agency world as an entry-level employee. How has that informed your belief that ideas can come from anywhere, and how has that impacted even your how you approach hiring?
Sure. Well, two things I think come to mind. One is, I did enter the business as the receptionist at a then terrific agency in New York, and then worked my way up through the creative department. And what I learned by doing that is that there are opportunities for great ideas to truly come from anywhere. So that is really something that we try to live. And so the two things I was going to mention is, one, we've tried to build in mechanisms for that to actually happen. There's a lot of people who say that, but if you are sitting in the production department or in the finance department, how do you actually get an idea to the right person that could come to life? So we've tried to build mechanisms in with collaboration for everyone in the agency to actually have a shot at coming up with great ideas. And it does two things. One, it helps us actually live that as opposed to just saying it or putting it on the wall. And two, it helps people feel like their ideas are truly valuable. And if they can come up with a great idea, it will go all the way to, not just the client, but to our consumers. It also has the effect that for anyone who might think it's easy to come up with great ideas, you realize how challenging it is and, just how hard it is to come up with great ideas when you're on the spot for a brief and you need to come up with something that's going to really move people. So that's the approach on great ideas can come from anywhere. And then the second piece of it in terms of hiring, when I became CEO, one of the things I realized very early was that when we have the right people in place, it makes life a lot easier. And so I began a policy of interviewing absolutely everyone who gets hired at the agency. So it doesn't matter if it's the receptionist or someone very senior, there is a step, which is me interviewing that person, and that step is not a rubber stamp. So that's just something that I've come to live, and I think it's been incredibly helpful because I know absolutely everyone in the agency. We're a little over 100 people. I know everyone. I know where they came from, what their skills are, and when we start talking about talent, sometimes I think you can be having conversations about talent where someone might be, a couple of levels down, more junior, and I'll remember, wait, didn't they do something at their previous job where they touched something like this. Let's pull them in and see if they can add something to the equation. So that's kind of a roll up your sleeve sort of attitude that I have.
You actually recently did an internship at Google. Why?
I think interesting, dynamic, and excellent partnership with our friends at Google. And it came about through a conversation where our CCO, Matt Miller, and I were talking about the new crop of interns. And that was, in the spring, and we said, it's such an incredible experience for our interns. How do we make this experience for them special? How do we make it something that's so compelling that they don't just want to go into advertising, they want to come work here? And we were talking about that, and we said, we should go do an internship someplace. You learn so much. And so then that evolved into us going and doing an internship at Google because we specifically wanted to learn more about programmatic and digital advertising, which is such a technical sort of aspect of our business. And this is last year, obviously, where we recognized that it was going to become more and more important as our industry evolves. And I think it's not just specifically programmatic, but as that evolves into more, the data mining and also addressable communication, which is going to obviously evolve to be much broader than just banner ads that follow you around the internet like it used to be.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious with the explosion in the MarTech stack, and CMOs and marketing departments struggling to make sense of all of that. How are you stepping in and actually helping them make sense of all of that?
A couple of things. I think the whole space is evolving obviously very rapidly. And so one of the things that's really exciting to me is that there's a shift from programmatic being considered borderline creepy as a consumer. I've clicked on something on a website and I looked at a hat and then that follows me around. There was a time not that long ago where when that happened, it almost like made you a little nervous.
Yeah, somebody's looking over my shoulder.
Someone's looking over my shoulder. But at the same time, that is rapidly evolving to be, ooh, I want that. That is the one I wanted. Right. So, for example, I think with the way digital advertising used to work, it was kind of wallpaper. You were trying to get to a certain piece of content, and it was the background, and you would just go past it, right? Now, with things being more addressable and more specific to your needs as an individual, you're much more likely to see something you actually want. And there's different ways that we can present that as marketers. We can present that, as film, as stills, as native content, et cetera, et cetera. And understanding that those are all different tools in the tool belt, and we need to help our partners understand when to use a hammer and when to use a screwdriver.
Much has been made, even 30 years ago about how the advertising agency, the model's dead and everything.
The agency? Or
well,
TV
even advertising,
dead,
just it's all dead.
We have to proclaim something dead at least every 5 years or
right,
so.
Just to be a little,
just to be provocative.
Yeah.
Right.
But you touched on something that I think is really, really interesting, which is, do you think we'll ever actually get to a state where we are building personalized campaigns?
I think it's imaginable. Yeah, I do. I think it's very imaginable that if you think about how specific we've been able to get with data, and obviously it's going to be a very hot topic in the next 2 years with everything that's happened, at Facebook. If you think about how specific we've been able to get, that addressability will come to television. It will come to all forms of media. And so then you'll be able to take what we right now, we can create campaigns where we say, okay, you skipped forward at 14 seconds into this ad because you obviously don't like that person or that character. Mm-hmm. So the next time we show you a version of this idea, we're going to show it to you in a different format, and it's going to come in a different way. It might be a different entry point on the same story, might be a completely different story. But you won't necessarily perceive it, but we'll know that you are one of those people who didn't like that moment and skipped it, and we'll come at it a different way. And there will be much more opportunity to change those options on the fly and create, sort of game theory it out ahead of time. It's already happening right now, but it'll be able to be much more detailed and much more individualized.
Right, far more options within those different scenarios.
Exactly. I mean, if you imagine what you can do right now with YouTube, for example, combined with the more specific addressability that we know is coming, combined with machine learning and the ability to create lots of different versions of things, you could see that coming. I don't know how far off it is.
Yeah,
but
I was going through the Webby Awards for YouTube ads, and one that struck me was actually something done by Lego, and it was the old idea of like choose your own adventure, and based on how you selected various things within the video, you'd be led down completely different paths. And
right.
That was really, really creative.
Absolutely. And so even within that, that in that case, it's like you said, choose your own adventure. But you can also say, okay, right now when I watch an ad, if in the first 5 seconds I don't want to watch it, I'll skip it, right? Well, we'll be able to know more and more about why you're skipping. What image are you skipping? Can we grab you in the first 3 and make you want to watch? And I mean, I think all this is great news for advertisers and also for advertising agencies. I mean, it's great news for creativity. It's great news for creative people, because even though, machine learning is going to have a role in that, you still can't write the song just because you know every note. You still need someone to actually write the song. And you still need a creative person to be clever about telling the story for people. And so I think I think advertising continues to get more and more interesting and more better. It continues to get more dynamic. It continues to get better for creatives because it's so much easier to skip it. That's good news for advertisers because their creativity is more valuable, not less valuable.
Right. From a tech perspective, what are some of the things that you're most excited about?
I'm most excited about addressability, and the topic we just covered is, I think, a huge opportunity to be able to tell really in-depth stories that are multifaceted and take individuals into account in the telling of the story. So that's one. The second is, I think that that things like augmented reality will very quickly become what your camera currently is, something you use every day and something that adds to your experience in life, the utility in your life. And when that happens, there's so much opportunity for storytelling for advertisers. Being able to stand on a street corner, hold up your phone and see effectively into restaurants and get reviews on them or know what the best meal is, or the storytelling opportunities there become infinite.
So talking about one of the newer channels, voice, right? We've seen this massive rise in digital voice assistants, Alexa and the rest of them. Tell us a little bit about how you're beginning to think about branding on a voice shelf.
It's really interesting because it's one of those things, if you think of voice as audio broadly, so many great brands have used audio sound cues as such a key element of who they are, right? If you think of the Intel bong, bong, bong type thing. And there's many, many examples. I think that becomes an incredible opportunity where you're effectively baking sound into the story. So trying to think of a good example for someone who's in an office and there's a conversation happening and Alexa picks it up or Google Home picks it up, and you're then served ads based on that. So you're not just telling a story based on what you've clicked on, you're telling a story based on what you've said. Which, again, similar to the programmatic conversation, at the beginning that's going to seem very scary. It's going to seem very creepy. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not we decide that's not acceptable, or whether or not the technology continues to evolve to where it is picking up pieces of your conversation. And when you're talking about a vacation and where should we go with your wife over dinner, the next thing you're getting served up destinations, all kinds of vacation ideas, all kinds of native content, stories about people going to exotic places. They may not be so direct as, $4.99, hop on a plane to wherever, but they could be native content. They could be podcasts that are relevant to travel, etc.
much has been made of Gen Z and even millennials to some extent that there's less and less brand loyalty among them. Have you seen that play out, or what are your feelings on that subject?
I think there's definitely things that change generation by generation, but I think if anything, one of the great effects of Gen Z or millennials is that they are loyal to brands that do the right thing in the world, and they're hungry for information about brands that will actually change their community, and that doesn't mean you can just say, we donated money to this thing and you're suddenly going to always buy those eyeglasses, but it's something that I think is just a positive force for good in the world, that this generation wants to know more about purpose. They want to know what's behind the brand. Social media has created this transparency that brands can't hide behind there's a corporate headquarters somewhere that nobody knows about. Your voice is daily and it's present, and it's got to be transparent, it's got to be authentic. And I think that generation, those generations are craving more and more information that helps them make those decisions. Doesn't mean they, analyze them more carefully necessarily, but I think it's a bigger part of the equation than it ever was before.
Nice. We talked a little bit about, the paid world, talked a little bit about, the social world. I wanted to talk a little bit about the owned world. More and more marketing budgets are going to digital these days, and a lot of that digital spend is done to bring traffic back to, brands' websites. How do you think we'll see the website of tomorrow? What does that look like? How do you think we'll see it evolve?
Yeah, it's a fascinating space because, it's not that long ago in our careers when we can remember when a company wanted to build a website, it was like you might have said, we're going to build a new building. That's the complexity and the cost. And now there are products out there that you can build a website overnight, and every high school kid can build a website, right? So it's a completely different environment where the value becomes not how slick is the production of the website. The value becomes what's the utility you're giving me as a consumer when I come there. What's the information you're giving me, or what's the practical application of what you're telling me? So I think the onus becomes less on, pure design. Sure, that's kind of the ante. It has to look great. It has to function well. But I think the onus now is on what's the utility and how is it going to change my life? And if I don't see something of value in the first 10 seconds, I'm probably gone. I mean, our attention spans are now so, I don't think attention spans have gotten shorter. So we're probably the MTV generation where people always said, are they going to be able to read a book and, by the time they become adults? We've proven that we can actually read a book, right? And the same thing is true now. I think it's not that attention spans are getting shorter, it's that people are giving their attention to things that deliver value. And so the difference is they can change it in an instant. They can change it in the blink of an eye. And so I saw a statistic the other day that something like the majority of people will abandon a website on mobile if it doesn't load within 3 seconds, right? So that's just a concrete example of, if I come to a site, I don't care how gorgeous it is unless I'm looking to book a travel ticket and the picture is something of a place I want to go. But if it's delivering utility, then I might spend more time. And if I'm learning something, if it charms me, if it delights me, if it makes me smile, if it's giving me information I didn't have, then I might spend 20 minutes with it. So I think that's a big shift. And again, the pressure is on the marketer to create content that's going to keep me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jim, thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. Really nice to talk to you.
That was Jim Lesser, President and CEO of BBDO San Francisco.